My name is Caleb Harper, and I'm an American. I think it's early days. So if you think of it like cars, before Ford, there were all these weird cars, like 5 wheels with a sail, or like it was partially human powered. It really is lacking kind of a basic framework, some standards, some openness and sharing of technology to push it forward. So that's what we're trying to do, is put everything out there and say, it's not that special. It's hardware. Hardware is commodity. Like, anyone can do this. It's really, how do you do it? What do you create? And that's the network we're trying to build. I would say, they're the same people that said cars are cool, but horses will win. It's the same kind of mentality. People say the sun is free, you should use the sun. But 5 billion people on this earth use electricity, and it wasn't a bad thing. So I think they're, looking at the problem somewhat romantically. And when you think about feeding the city of Lagos, the mega cities in Africa that are starting to be built now, the mega cities in Asia, the ones in Europe and the United States that already exist, this is going to require new technology. This is going to require more smart people working on the problem. And that's what we're trying to create. So I do believe it'll reach scale. I don't think it will replace farming. I don't think that, we're going to need it all. The corn, the soy, the wheat, the rice that comes from all over the world and is treated like oil. It's commodity. But we're also going to need new ways to produce fresh food where we live. Turns out we all want to live in cities. So that's where it's going to happen. Technophobia in food is a huge problem. It's not a problem, it's just everything now is about trust and transparency. If you're not creating more trust or more transparency in the future of food, you're going to lose, because the consumer has voted. The consumer says, I don't trust big food. I don't trust big agriculture anymore. They've hidden too many things from my eyes. So how I overcome that? I think if I was to take what I'm working on and put it in a black box, it would never work. It would never ever work. But instead, it's in a clear box, and it's free for everyone to use. We're starting by putting it in schools, because what happens when your kid comes home and says, I've learned to grow this food this way, it's so interesting. You start to, understand, okay, like maybe my concept of what is natural, of what is, organic, maybe my concept isn't fully formed. And maybe I can think about these new technologies because it is something I can have, I can be part of. My kids can learn, I'll see it in my community. It's basically like a greenhouse. So starting culturally with this at the very first stage, not letting it get black boxed away from everyone, is why I think it will scale. I think a 7-year-old boy or girl, it's about speaking to their interests. So if you say, hey, you want to go outside and grow some plants? And they're like, okay, and they get really excited and they put a seed in the ground and then they look at it. And then they're like, I'm going to go back to playing video games, right? Like, this is awful. But when you can show them a video game that runs the farm, when you can make farming digital, when you can speak their language, like, here's a good example. I went into a school, I had a food computer, and I said, set it to 65 degrees of humidity, 65%. The kid said, what's humidity? And I was like, oh, it's water and air. And the kid said, you're a liar. There's no water and air. And I said, okay, set it to 100. Sets it to 100, and it starts to fog, and it starts to drip. And he says, oh, humidity is rain. Why didn't you just tell me that? So giving them these tools to experiment with their own thoughts. Like, CO2 is bad. I should remove all the CO2. And then the plant dies. And they're like, why did the plant die? You can teach them about CO2, but you can teach them about it because they're coding the controller, or because they're soldering in the sensors, or because they're playing the video game that runs the farm. So I think that's how you get them excited. And every classroom I drop off a food computer in, which is a lot now, it becomes this object of kind of, it's like dropping off like the future, like all the kids running, what is this thing? It's growing pink, it has plants in it, they have a video game that they get to play in class, so it hasn't been hard to motivate anyone. If it was 30 years ago and I was 17, I would have been building computers inside of garages. This is that moment for ag tech. if people look back and they're like, oh, if we only knew, if we could all be Bill Gates or we could all be Steve Jobs, and they knew, and they were in their garage just tinkering. They were in their garage just tinkering. So many people said it wouldn't work. So many people called them idiots. College dropout, idiot, loser, not going to make it, should have done something else. That's this moment for the next generation of people in agriculture technology, because everyone says agriculture is old, agriculture is antiquated, this growing with technology will never work. So I say food is the new internet. This generation has the chance to be Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and that's what's happening. I've experienced the exact opposite. I have more women working with me in my group than men. I feel immensely lucky that that's the case. People say, oh, there's no women in science. I don't know where they work. They don't work at MIT Media Lab. They don't work at MIT in general. So saying that they're a distraction in the lab is absolutely wrong. Couldn't be further from the truth. I've had 2 undergrads write their thesis with me, both women, both amazing thesis. So I think what's kind of amazing about what we're working on is it's a tool to empower people that have ideas. And a lot of times those tools are kept away. They're locked up in a PhD level education. And so to even that playing field, I think to even it for gender, to even it for ethnicity, is absolutely necessary for it to be open and democratic. And it's happened in my lab, and some of the best innovations. One of the most productive people in my group is a female PhD flavor chemist. She's helping us understand so much that I would have never been able to do. So I couldn't disagree more with the statement that they would be a distraction. They're an absolute asset. I think for me, coming here, seeing new ideas in my field. I just watched my own panel. As soon as I got off, I sat in the audience, and that rarely happens to me. Normally I speak and then I leave the conference because I'm busy. But for that level of magnetism is why I came, to see new ideas and new fields. A lot of my friends are here, so that helps. So that's why I'm here. Here's the world. So it's mostly water. There are some continents here. Do a really bad job of drawing things. Okay. And right now, we grow some food here. And we use a big ship to take it here. And we grow some food here. And we use a big kind of airplane.
Nice.
To send it here. Let me see. This is not the future. Not the future. Okay. The world that we're creating now have some countries. Is one where we grow the food here and we send it wirelessly over here. Grow food here wirelessly, send it over here, and we've created a network with a computer, just like the internet. So what is this computer, this so-called computer, right? We know it's not an actual computer. Computer is a box. Could be, 0.5 meter, 0.5 meter, 0.5 meter. Could be also just a box, 50 meter, 50 meter, 50 meter. Just a box that can control things. Inside that box, we're starting now to grow plants. we have this we call the new motherboard. Okay, we all know what a motherboard is for computers. It has all the components. So we have a little thing that makes humidity, little thing that makes CO2, little thing that adds nitrogen, whatever it is. So we have inputs, then we have some, in this case, everybody that's doing electronics knows Arduino, and Raspberry Pi. This is a tiny computer and a tiny controller. You're sending things in, and we have sensors. Okay, you're doing all of this. You get to experiment. This can create digital recipe of what you did. This digital recipe is what is getting sent. So this food computer over here can just download climate and then grow the same plant.
Perfect.
That's my project. There you go.